Members, the House is resumed. We are on the second reading of the Exclusive Economic Zone and Continental Shelf Environmental Effects Transitional Provisions Amendment Bill. Before the dinner break, Matt Ducey was speaking and has 5 minutes, 30 seconds remaining, should he wish.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Matt Ducey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before the dinner break, I was talking about the consequence of this very important legislation, or the consequence if we didn't have this important bill. And I was quoting the regulatory impact statement, Mr. Speaker, which acknowledged in 2011 there was a 5-day outage in Maui, and that cost to gas consumers was over $200 million a day. So at $40 million a day, it is important and imperative that not only is this legislation and these regimes protecting the environment, but protecting our economy as well. So a key issue of this bill, Mr. Speaker, at the Select Committee stage was very much about the specified timeframes and the timeframes of applying for a marine consent. And for a new MP to watch this process play out was very informative. There was a lot of learning and great to be part of, to see how decisions are made based on the evidence put forward. So the Select Committee sought advice to understand the different timeframes that they could look at for this bill, and very much it's looking at what timeframe an operator would need to submit their application for a marine consent. The first option, there was one of three, the first being at 6 months, and this looked quite an interesting suggestion, and at first look it actually looked a very good one when it looked at the benchmarking compared to the current EEZ Act, as well as benchmarking against the RMA with the date of 6 months around consenting. There was also a comparison made around the Crown Minerals Act with extending a mining permit around the 6-month mark. But where it came unstuck, Mr. Speaker, was around the need for 140 days, which is the statutory timeframe for the Environmental Protection Agency consideration, and of course appeals and objections. So 140 days did not fit into the 6 months. 12 months did seem quite a good period of time as well, but possibly a bit too long. So the Select Committee settled for the 9-month period for the time frame for the application for marine consent to be submitted, which would allow for the full 140-day statutory time frame, as well as 15 days allowed for appeals and objections. We did, Mr. Speaker, have 5 submissions, and 2 of these were heard orally. We had the frack-free, Kapiti and beyond, and they thought there seemed to be offering operators an open-ended time frame. And this seemed to be a theme that came through a lot of the discussions, as well as allowing existing operators to continue activities that might need to be mitigated against. But I would draw reference to this national government bringing in this EEZ Act, Mr. Speaker, entirely for this reason, to regulate where previously there was not regulation. But, Mr. Speaker, having an open-ended time frame is important, because something that Kiwis value, and our colleagues over in the Green Party would suggest it's only them and their members that have the best interests of the environment at heart, but actually protecting, supporting and enabling the environment is actually intrinsic to every Kiwi, and it's intrinsic to every New Zealander. So it's right having an ability that is somewhat open-ended for any New Zealander who feels like they would like to make a submission around this marine consent to be heard. And I welcome that, and I think that is very good. It's very good for accessibility, it's very good for transparency, and it's fantastic for public involvement, as all New Zealanders want to protect their environment for the future and for their children. There was an issue around the flexibility of Section 162, which provided a real uncertainty for investment for these petroleum operators, but also around business continuity. And we heard from one of the submitters that was supporting the industry, Pepans, who were representing petroleum operators, other stakeholders and individuals involved in this sector. And I must say that at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, I think they had a leadership role that possibly they didn't enact. So overall, a great bill, and I support it to the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.